Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Hour 3 of Aurorum Kingmaker Session 6, where you've destroyed the tree, you've leveled up, you've buried dead people, you've said goodbye to a new friend and friends, and then you've traveled to the town of Rid. Here we are. You guys are walking into the town itself. Now, we've already described what it looked like outside of this area. There was a lot of trees that should have grown all the way to the line of the actual river itself. However, it had been cut back considerably over the course of years. The trees had been cut back, which is wonderful because it's where they got the wood for building their houses. Approaching the town of Rid, you notice that, well, right off the bat, as I said, you'd seen it from the hill, kind of like looking down, and it's about a mile and a half out. One of the things that you can notice, even from that distance, is it's not a very big town. Much like a lot of towns, it starts off with farmland around it, and then it has some sparse buildings beyond that. Or sorry, closer within to the center of that. And then the very center of the town itself is probably only about 15 or 20 structures tightly put together. Much like how all structures are put together inside of a city. And then, like I said, just kind of like spans out from there. Very, very small. You start making your way into the town of Rid. Now, you don't have horses. You don't have steeds. You're just on foot. Because unfortunately, I believe you had taken... Did you take horses originally? No, you've never had horses. That's right. So you don't have steeds or anything, so you just go walking into the town. Occasionally, a farmer, much like when you were first walking through the fields, plotting through the fields, it's kind of like working the field, tilling it, and like looks up and leans on it and just spends the entire time that you're in their field of vision. You know, it's like 15, 20 minutes just leaning and taking the break to watch you as you walk past very slowly. Because you're a sight. You can imagine not many travelers come through here, right? And then when you finally get to the actual edge of the town itself, the first house you come across has a couple of kids outside of it playing, some sort of stickball where they throw rocks at each other. Not in front of, but literally at each other and try to hit it away with the stick and some game that they're playing. But even they will kind of like, hey, look at it. And they're kind of like staring at you guys as you go by because, again, not very many travelers come through here. And that's very much the impression you're getting. And then you come walking into the actual town. When you get to the town there, you can see that much like everywhere else in Idir, it's predominantly human. But there are a good number of Mull that live here too. It's one of the first things that strikes you. You come into the town and you see humans everywhere, but polka dotted everywhere is Mull. No Perrin, of course. No, halflings, of course, or even gnomes. Just the two races. And you start walking throughout the town, looking for what building, what structure you guys are trying to open to see it first.
I'm not sure we're looking for anywhere in particular at first. Rather, taking an inventory of what sort of services are available would be the best course of action at the moment, I think.
It seems like the one thing that they have in spades, they have plenty of to go around for everyone, is boredom. The people in the town itself don't seem to really be doing anything. Like I said, there were kids playing. There's others standing about or having conversations. But nobody's like bustling and moving rapidly like you imagine a fast-growing town would have. Like you imagine a place that's, flourishing would have. It's just people that seemingly have no purpose.
I have a 250 gold writ. Is there anywhere I can cash it in this town?
So you probably would approach one of the townsfolk to ask this. Would this be a random townsfolk?
Yeah.
Okay. So you walk up to a random townsfolk and you literally say along those lines, yeah, I have a 250 gold piece writ. Is there any way I can cash this in? And they look down at the thing and they're kind of like squinting. And you can see that after about 7 or 8 seconds, you can see it says, this. About 3 seconds later, he's like, it is the... And you get the impression they're not very literate.
This is the deed to your house. You must vacate.
He looks at you like, wait, really?
No, and I just slap him on the back and keep walking. And put it away.
Genuinely, looks both like scared and somewhat angry and perplexed, completely confused by the scenario. Realizing that the average person in this town is probably not going to be very bright, you guys figure maybe one of the establishments would be a better spot for you. So kind of look about, as Neil was saying before, an inventory of the town to see what they offer. There is a tavern here, tavern being a place to drink. There are no inns here, being a place where you can rest your head. There is a blacksmith that is here. You can just tell by walking by the place as a blacksmith meant to work on things like, shoes and very like horseshoes.
Everything.
Yeah, very, very basic stuff. But even then,
integral.
Exactly. And even then, the quality of it is not very, like the horseshoes are okay and stuff like that. So moving on. But other than even those two establishments, there's really no other businesses that seem to be here. Why don't you roll me a knowledge local check as you're kind of like looking about and trying to find anything else that might be here.
Haha.
Nice roll.
I mean, wrong subheading. Can you delete that old sheet?
Yeah.
In furious, righteous vengeance, delete it.
Yeah.
You broke. You're gone. Bye. Thank you.
Which one's level 2-1?
This one that I used to roll.
I said
the one.
I said level 2-1. Okay, so the one that so
Your damn name.
And this is not level 2-1. I just want to make sure I click that because I'm going to delete the wrong one. Haha. Sorry, that damn name. I'm deleting the incorrect one. Damn it! It still applies. I put in the word. Anyways, all right, there we go. So you guys have you're looking about, trying to find. Well, the other thing that you notice here that has to be a place of interest is not that there is a another business, but there is a place where a couple of the locals are gathered about and gambling. Rolling dice and whatnot. Now, the dice you can clearly see as you're kind of like walking by and tossing a sideways glance, certainly not trying to have them notice you, at least not at first, and not trying to get their attention or give them yours. But noticing the dice, you see that even the dice themselves aren't straight dice. Like, they're not like perfectly crafted flat dice. They're just like somebody had carved it out of wood or bone or something like that and didn't do a very good job. So those are your establishments. Tavern, blacksmith, and a place where people are gambling. But it's more of just a gathering.
Fantastic. This seems peculiarly quiet.
It's probably just some backwater.
Yes, you might think that, but it's a backwater connected to the capital via a river, which then connects to one of the largest empires in the realm. I have to say,
Town's probably just growing food. They probably send it down the river.
Well, yes, but we saw crops that were ready for harvest out there. Yes, there are a few people working, but I would have thought there'd be a bit more action. Excuse me. He talked to the people gambling because they clearly have nothing better to do with their life.
They stop. They size you up and down for a couple of moments, trying to gauge you, and then one of them says, "You got coin?"
No, I've got questions actually.
Ain't nothing I can do with questions. Can't take that home to my wife.
Perhaps.
One slams his fist down on the table and just says, "Answer the question."
Do you slam it down like ridiculously hard, or just to gather their attention?
Not so much that the table's like, the money falls off the table, but he's gonna rattle the money around.
Okay, awesome. So just a typical hand slam. Roll an intimidation check, sir.
Can I just take 10 or something? Is that something I can do every day?
Oh, yeah. I think it's something you can do every occasion.
I'm trying to find it now. I can't find it.
It's under your traits and abilities. I think you can literally
Oh, yeah, you can always take 10.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll just take 10. That's 21.
Okay, so you're just like, I'm just going to take a 21.
Yeah.
Thanks, bro. Cool story.
That's pretty strong.
Yep, pretty powerful ability to always take a 10.
Is that an Inquisitor thing?
No, it's a trait that he had chosen a character. He actually spent a feat to get 2 extra traits, so he has 4 traits instead of 2 like you guys.
Uh-huh.
So they work together very well. So anyways, you actually say that, and you can see that they actually go from being kind of unfriendly to being a little bit more like, okay, they calm down a little bit. They actually turn towards him. What was your actual question, Neil?
He hadn't asked any question yet.
Okay.
He'd simply said, "Excuse me," and the man was a cop.
Being rude, yep. And so he's like, all right, question. What's that?
The town seems rather quiet. Is it always like this?
He actually will like kind of like peek his head past you and like look around and kind of like screws up his face for a second, and he'll even go so far as like stand up and like looks around and everything. He's like, no, it's about right. It's not quiet.
I see. We were hoping to speak to someone who might have information about the goings-on nearby. Perhaps someone we could secure a bit of, some form of barge down the river. We're heading to Howd Gwen.
They kind of like look amongst themselves for a second. Do me a favor, roll me a gather information check, which I know for you is a slightly different check than regular diplomacy.
It is. Oh, no. 6-3.
What's your special ability that you have with gather information?
It's that.
Oh,
It's
okay.
+2. It's just a basic +2.
Okay, gotcha. So you you ask that question, and they're like, I don't really know who might have information about barges and whatnot, and unless you ask a barge itself, you can kind of stand by the river. Maybe you'll see one come by.
There's none scheduled to collect produce from the town?
Do they schedule those sorts of things?
No, I suppose not. Not when there's no one. Never mind. Good day. I said to the tavern.
Is there any spare seats at this table?
What was that? My apologies.
Are there any spare seats at this table?
It's not like there are chairs there. It's more of just like a barrel with like a slate or whatever put on top of it. You're more or less just walking up to it, and there is room to stand there.
One would be like, so what are we playing, boys?
They look amongst each other for a second, and they're like, playing dice.
What's the buy-in?
Looks you down and up and says, 7 copper.
Then he turns and walks off.
You can hear them whisper amongst themselves, too rich for his blood. So you guys start walking off. Where are you heading towards?
Tavern is probably the best shout for now. Unfortunately, there's no leaders in Idir. So the tavern is probably the most likely place to find a pseudo-leader.
You walk into the tavern. One of the first things you notice with the tavern is the cobwebs. Like, there's a lot of cobwebs in the ceiling. And underneath some of the tables. This place looks like it's not very often used. The one place where there aren't cobwebs is behind the bar. Because the bar actually does get used often enough. Sitting at the bar itself, you can see an older guy. Looks like probably in his, 40s or so. Slumped forward and kind of hunched over his whatever's in his tankard, his wooden tankard there. Staring into it, probably either seeing his future or his past through his whatever swill it is he's drinking. And there's a bartender behind the bar that's standing there, doesn't acknowledge you guys as you come in. but also doesn't like move or say anything or do anything. It's just kind of like standing there leaning up against the wall as it is. Looking across the room, most of the place is empty. But over in one of the far sides, there's another table that has been recently cleaned off. No cobwebs or anything like that there. And there's some stuff set at the table, though there is no person sitting there right now. There's some stuff set at the table. Clearly somebody has a drink set there, and there's a book open there, and they're, have their stuff there, but they themselves had stepped out for a moment.
A pleasant establishment. Good morning, afternoon. Where are we?
It's late morning to early afternoon, somewhere in that time frame.
Good morning.
Nobody responds.
Good morning.
The old guy that slumped over his drink slowly turns to look at you. Like full on stares at you. You can see just like the age did not settle well with him. Stares at you like silently for like 5 or 6 seconds. And then they slowly turn their head to look at the bartender. Stares like another 3 or 4 seconds. Then turns to look at you and says, "He's sleeping." And then looks back down into his drink.
All right, one walks behind the bar.
Yep.
Starts filling some stuff up.
So
Reverend, you want one?
No, Yes, okay. How much would one cost?
One. I'm assuming I would know what the standard price for like an ale is.
Sure, yeah. Depending on the location, just call it a couple copper.
Yeah, it'll be a couple of copper.
Okay.
Val sits down, very amused at the situation, and orders a glass of wine.
That'll be 1 gold, though.
He stifles for a second. He's like, "Never mind, I'll have what he's having."
Raren will put a couple copper in front of the sleeping bartender.
Yeah, one will walk over, pick it up, and go, "Yeah, thanks, man." And then he slaps a beer down for you.
Shouldn't you be liberating yourself from the shackles of greed?
Nope.
Nope, that's not a Vrogar thing. Okay.
No. Man, I'm just being the bartender.
Right. Yep. You're working hard. I see. Very good. Well done.
He grabs like a rag and he's like
cleaning.
So the bartender just continues to sleep through.
Raren would like finish half his pint before waking him up.
Mm-hmm.
And he would do so by tapping him on the hand.
Okay. So you just like reach over across the bar, and, like tap the hand a couple times. Is one still behind the bar?
Yep.
Looks over, he's like, "Whoa, oh!" And he starts like reaching down, trying to grab like a small crossbow that he has set behind the bar. It starts reaching down,
One's
trying
like,
to grab.
"Whoa, man!
What?
You hired me yesterday. What are you doing?"
One's been helping out. One's been helping out while you've been having your breaks.
Can I actually make a bluff check?
Yeah, you can. It's gonna be a high DC though.
That's cool.
This is where you get fucking shot in the face.
Yeah.
He doesn't believe you. You obviously you both try to sit down the situation. He does pull up the crossbow and tries to bring it to bear. But almost immediately, the two of you realize, one, not only is there not a bolt, set, or the actual string cocked, but even just a quick glance at this thing and the horrible condition that it's in, even if it was aimed true by a skilled marksman, you're not sure they'd hit their target. You know what I mean? Like, this thing is messed up.
One's just cleaning the glass, and when he sees him like aim the crossbow at him, even though he's like sees that it's all not working, he just drops the glass and he goes, "Okay, this is what we're gonna do." He grabs his axe and he pulls it out and goes, "Come on then."
He because the glass was a wooden cup, right? It clatters down on the ground. He looks down, looks up, sees the axe there, and he's like, "So you want the coin?"
No, man, I just wanted to help you out, but you're such a prick.
What can I get for you then? And
No,
then the
good.
old man sitting there starts laughing as he finds the situation amusing.
I put the axe away and I pick the cup back up and start cleaning it again.
Right as this whole bit is taking place, transpiring, Val and Rayrin are laughing a little bit. The old man's laugh is kind of like a... and it's a small laugh, but it's there. And the guy looks perplexed. All of a sudden, you see a man come walking into the room from one of the back rooms. Blonde, light blonde colored hair and bronze skin. He comes walking in wearing these pretty flamboyant looking purple robes that also have a bit of gold filigree put into them themselves. He comes walking in, tosses a sideways glance over at the bar, expecting to see these things as they were before, starts to look back towards the table where his stuff was, then snaps the head back over at the bar and goes, "Whoa, okay, there's people here."
What can I get you, friend?
Thinks for a second. My drink's almost empty. You know what? I guess I'll, he comes over and he pops up a chair at the side of the bar. He's like, what's a bottle of the best stuff you got back there? He says, kind of like crane his neck and look.
One turns around and he's like, yeah, we got a bottle of Perrin wine right there. And he grabs it down.
He's like, Perrin? Here. Wonderful. And you pull it down.
Yeah, it's the best bottle.
You pull it down and you, start pouring it. Immediately as you start pouring it, you can smell that the wine has turned at some point in time. It's like one of those moments where like everybody's sitting around picks up the moment where it's sitting there and now like you've done pouring the wine and it's set before him and it's one of those like, what's the refund policy?
You haven't had Perrin wine before, have you?
Perhaps not this vintage.
Well, I've already poured it, so let's do it. And whatever, I don't know, whatever I'm assuming an expensive glass of wine would be, I'd be like, that'll be such and such.
He nods to the price and says, you know what, in fact, why don't you drink with me then? Please, get another glass. We'll have one together.
If you're buying.
Oh, absolutely.
I grab one down, fill it up.
Picks up his goblet, and he says, to new friends in strange places. Tap it, and he goes and to take a gulp. 1 second.
Fortitude checks incoming.
He's not very convincing in his faking sipping the drink. As he goes to take a sip, and I imagine you actually take your gulps. As you're like, mother.
He sees him go to pretend, he goes, and does it anyway.
Drinks it anyways. There you go.
Yeah.
Do me a favor, roll me a fortitude save. It is disgusting. It is literally turning your stomach. It is gross. Like the smell of it, the taste is so sour and bitter at the same time. And it's just so nasty. But it's not like it makes you vomit or anything like that. It's just, it literally turns your stomach and, it's going to last in your mouth for a while.
One's like, I need the orcish stuff.
Looking a little peaky there, one.
Well, anyway, that will be, and he looks back to the guy and he's like, give me the money.
Yep, there's a couple of silver pieces. He throws down the silver, and as he's throwing down the silver and kind of like chuckling at the situation, the bartender, the actual bartender standing here, goes, and who are you? Referring to the guy that you had just seen across the way. He's like, oh, don't worry. You were sleeping when I had come in about an hour's time beforehand, so I had gone around the bar and poured myself a drink. And don't worry, I have it settled over there, and I intended to pay it as soon as you woke up. My name is Elliot Mann. How much does it cost for this? The ale I had poured for myself over there? I'll be more than happy to cover the cost of that one as well.
I say whatever I told Rayrin it was.
And so he throws down that coin as well and says, and there we are, saying to the bartender, I've settled it with your relief. I hope that you get some excellent rest tonight when you get home. It's a pleasure meeting you. And he hops off the stool and starts making his way over towards the other thing, leaving behind the untouched glass.
One picks it up and is like,
Oh,
Okay, this time it really does turn your stomach. It was one of those things where it's like, you're definitely going to feel that later on. Either this way or this way. You're going to be feeling that one later on. But, hey, alcohol's
What?
alcohol.
accepting.
what
And I'll
mark?
flick the guy that's silver or whatever and be like, and that's how you do business. And then I will just leave the bar.
And do you do a sassy click as well? That's how
Yeah.
you do business.
Exactly.
And then wander off.
Yeah, I just go sit next to Valorant and let Rayron do whatever talking he wanted to do.
What stamp is the coinage that this man just paid with?
Absolutely. It's actually, so you're looking at the coin, and it is Tasian.
Okay. Once he's noted that, he'd speak to the bartender. He'd say, "Excuse me. We came into town. It's rather disconcerting. We expected there to be a little bit more bustle. Has anything gone wrong? Or never mind. Really, what we want to know is perhaps you'd know if we could seek passage via a barge out of town."
Barges around here stop when they come by. Stop sometimes. And they'll trade with the farmers.
Yes, we're just looking for some form of transport down to Houtgwen.
Oh, well, if you head out of the road to the south and just kind of keep walking on the road itself, you'll get there eventually. Or if you want, you can stick along the actual river. You could stick along the river too. There's no bridges when you get down across those, so it might get a little. If you're on the wrong side of the, could get a little. But
I appreciate that, kind sir, but transport rather than walking the entire way.
Oh, then, like you said, a barge.
And when is the next barge?
Oh,
likely
they stop
to-
by here sometimes, but I don't think there's any set time. I think just kind of,
Right. So what do you do with crops if no barges arrive?
I don't know. I buy what I need at the market, and I eat what I need.
Okay.
Oh, I buy stuff for the store. We do cook here too. I can make a pretty mean roast. Oh, I suppose that would take a few hours. You're gonna be here. Are you gonna be here for dinner?
Maybe we'll try one later. Well, in fact, why don't you get started now? I'm sure that all of us here would like a good piece of meat, particularly one over there.
One turns around, he's like, yeah, I'd love it. And he's like, oh. And then he gets up, his eyes widen, and he just looks at you both, and then just walks outside. And you can just hear him
No. You guys can hear, even though he never looks up for the book that he's currently poring over at the moment, you can actually hear the gentleman that had introduced himself moments beforehand chuckling to himself. Every time you hear that,
he's reading a book.
Yeah.
Oh well. Thank you for your help. We'll be here for dinner tonight. If you wouldn't mind getting started on something for the four of us.
He says, yeah, I can do that. And he takes off his somewhat dirty apron and kind of folds up and puts it away and puts on a off-white apron that's probably more dirty than the one he just took off. And he goes over to the old guy that's sitting there and just staring into his mug and says, hey, Carl, could you keep an eye on things for me? The guy doesn't even move or anything. And he's like, thanks. And, drops a key onto the bar and grabs up some coin and walks out of the bar. Goes elsewhere.
Rarin would then head over to Elliot's table and say, "May I sit?"
Okay, so you go over to Elliot's table, and when you go to sit down, you go to sit at the table, and unfortunately, the chair literally just
He doesn't go to sit.
Oh,
He
okay.
asks.
Oh, he says yes.
He's polite.
He says yes,
Cool. Then he would sit.
and the chair literally breaks underneath you as you go to sit on it. Maybe it was old, maybe it was feeble, maybe just bad luck happened to happen. But the chair completely snaps as you sit on it, sending you tumbling to the ground, and bits of chair falling on you, kind of like jabbing and poking at you in very uncomfortable ways, and causing the Elliot, as you had said his name, to lean around the table and look at you and be like, "You all right?"
It appears that my table is made of the same stuff. My chair is made of the same stuff as that bartender.
Chuckles at that, and he'll actually get up and go get another chair for you to sit on.
Thank you. You clearly aren't from around here. I can tell that quite abundantly from the fact you can read. How is it you ended up in town?
I made a mistake.
Please elaborate, if you would.
Well, you see, I was coming from Tazian, that's where I'm originally from, and doing all sorts of studies and whatnot, and I came into Idir because I heard there were some interesting things that could be studied of in Hard Gwen. Unfortunately, I couldn't find what it was that I was trying to study while I was down there, so I figured maybe I'd misunderstood what it was I was looking for, and so I headed north. Figured, hey, maybe the next town up would have a bit of information for me. I got here 2 days ago, 3 days ago, but it doesn't matter. What it is when I got here, I was just as perplexed as, well, I was eavesdropping, what it was that you guys were talking about, and I was like, oh, perhaps it was a mistake to come up here, but honestly, it's so quiet. And so it gave me like an opportunity to really like pour into, go over my studies again, read my notes, and see if I had translated things well. Apparently I had it translated things well, and what I was looking for is not in Hod Gwen, and it's maybe even further north of here. Oh well, doesn't really matter.
Elliot, well, that's a very interesting theory. Perhaps I might just have a little look at you. I have a little theory about the whole town that I'm just starting to develop. You know that Idir is subject to a curse, so obviously the entire land is affected in various ways. And I was wondering whether I could just perhaps see whether you've been exposed to some of this sort of energy. I mean, you understand you're a researcher yourself.
Are you talking about magic?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Cool. Valren.
Hops off the chair, comes over, and he's like, g'day.
Can you sense any magic? I'm just going to have a little look at him.
Perhaps before we go ahead and do something like that, I now know his name is Valorant because you just said it, and the other one's name is One. Strange, but I heard you say it. But you haven't introduced yourself.
My name is Raren. Pleasure to meet you.
He'll stand up and give you a vigorous handshake. Undoubtedly, the pleasure is all of mine.
So Raren's going to, first off, he can cast light, but he doesn't want to do it as blindingly as you like. Presumably, he can dim it down a little bit. He casts light on his finger, and he waves it in front of his eyes. He wants to see whether there's a normal response, because this guy's like, there's no he's left his country to head to some shithole, and now he wants to stay here. It's not right. All the others are complacent and happy with doing nothing. I mean, hell, those two are basically dead on their feet. So there's clearly some sort of lethargy, magical in nature, in play, and the best person to check would be Elliot, because he's the one who's been least affected, and so it's newest, and so he's a new case of it, as it were. So if Varen could detect magic, that would be very useful. And I guess this would be a heal check.
You roll me your heal check and give me 1 second. My character sheet's
or
loading.
Arcana. I don't know. What would you roll? Like spellcraft, Arcana, heal. What do you want?
Well, he's going to be doing sense motive. You're doing heal check if you're doing like a physical.
Go.
You're like grabbing his, trying to have him cough.
Nice.
So, Valerie looking him over is able to What was that?
I blind him. Roll a 1. Nice, great. Bzz.
Valrin looking him over, casting the detect magic in general, is not detecting any magic in the area whatsoever. You looking him over, honestly, his response time seems very, very, very off.
As I thought. This seems peculiar. I would advise that it's probably best for you to get out of town as fast as possible. Your reaction times are much slower than they should be.
Really?
Yes, indeed. I am not an expert on the matter, but I've had a basic schooling.
You carry yourself like a soldier.
Yes, sort of. Yes, another time I was, yes. But perhaps you could assist us. We're also looking to get to Howd Gwenin, and I believe we may be looking for what you were looking for. If you've heard the same rumors, there is a sort of. I presume you were looking for ruins of a sort.
In fact, yes, I am. You're looking for the same thing. That's peculiar, to say the least.
Yes, my friend here believes in fate, destiny. Some might say it's that. Perhaps we could share notes on the matters.
I don't know anything about that. Let's be honest, I don't know much about you, and so I don't think it'd be a good idea to maybe open my books to you. And then he actually says, with a pretty accurate a Malton accent, speaking Tasian, of course, with a pretty accurate a Malton accent. He actually says like a phrase that's pretty common amongst your military, which is, don't turn your flank to your enemy. Or sorry, don't turn your flank to the unknown, not your enemy.
You served?
No, I'm just familiar with your culture. Malton, yes?
Yes.
You have the soft hands of a caster. It's also the way that you pronounce your words. It's clearly a Malton. Carry yourself like a soldier. I assume you had some sort of officer's rank, probably training in magics. Not to mention, of course, you did make your finger light up.
Yes. So...
Why are you so far past the wall? You served in the wall, yes?
I served at the wall until I was relieved.
When you say relieved, he kind of tried to gauge what you meant by relieved.
Let me roll that deception, baby.
It's bluff. Good night, Steve.
Yeah, okay. Great.
It's a pretty good roll. It's a pretty good roll there, Neil. But, so you, so he asks you, you served at the wall or whatever, and he said, so my apologies until I was relieved. He says, relieved. You mean abandoned post.
No, I was relieved.
Relieved in what way?
A group of Perrin relieved me from my duty with a set of chains.
Oh, certainly the chains have been broken. You are with a worshipper of Rogar. I imagine part that had to go in lines with why it is that you're free now. Why wouldn't you go back to serve your duties any further?
You don't seem entirely stupid to me. What do you think would happen if an Imultan attempted to make his way back to the wall the direct route? The route that the Perrin are currently assaulting. Let me give you 30 seconds to think about that. Maybe you want to think about, what happens when an enemy marches through a war camp. Go on, have a think.
He takes the full 30 seconds on the nose, if your character was counting. And then he simply responds saying, you don't look like an Imultan. You probably could slip through pretty easily. Are those slavers' clothes you're wearing? I'm sure the right coin in the right hands, you would have made it back through no problem. Just got to work on the accent a bit.
Yes, well, it seems I'm at a disadvantage now. You seem to have worked out a lot about me, and I seem to know very little about you.
Oh, well, perhaps we can get to know each other a little bit more. Now, you're saying that my reaction time is a little bit off because of your military training. I can trust military training. And that I should be leaving the town immediately. Well, I have no love for the town, beyond, of course, a little bit of peace and quiet for me to focus, and it seems as though that is only bringing me dangers. I could be out of the town in probably about 15 to 20 minutes' time. I'll be ready to leave. Or which direction are you heading?
The river.
So you're heading south?
No, we're not certain yet. We have to find a barge.
Oh, you're really fixated on that barge. A barge comes through here, from what I understand, periodically, maybe once a week or so, but not a defined point in time. And last time I saw one about 4 days ago. So if you're waiting for a barge specifically, you're going to be waiting for a few days' time. And if there's a saturated magic in this area that is going to have an effect on you, perhaps you should keep to the roads.
Who told you there was a barge coming through every week?
I've spoken with more than a few people in this town, hoping to find some pulse. There's not one.
I see. So you reached the same conclusion as me.
Yeah, I imagine so, yeah.
Very well, thank you for the information.
Not to the roads, then?
Hmm?
Not to the roads, then?
I mean, perhaps I would need to speak with my friends first.
Either way, may our paths cross again. I'm sure I'll see you in Hod Gwen. And he, sticks out his hand to shake yours.
I'm sorry, why would you be heading to Howd Gwen? I thought you told me that you were heading further north.
But then you'd said that you had also heard rumors that what it was that I was looking for was in fact in Hod Gwen, which just means that my notes were misconstrued somewhere along the way, perhaps my mistranslation.
But you also said that you don't trust me enough to let me look at your notes. And yet you trust me enough to travel all the way back.
Well, I don't think you're a dishonest person.
Then perhaps I could have a look at your notes.
Doesn't necessarily mean I want you to win the race.
You think you might win against us?
Well, I mean, he looks about just you and Valrin. Valrin doesn't look pretty imposing, but he clearly is a mage. You know what I mean? Or a caster of sorts. He says, if you're talking about a battle to the death, I imagine not so, not in the least bit. However, if you're talking about battle of the wits, I think I've already won. In which case, I'm going to gather my things and head to the south, and I wish you a speedy journey.
You realize that battle to the death and battle to the wits are rather the same in these sorts of things.
It doesn't have to be. Doesn't have
to be. Oh, really? Tell me, just out of interest, have you ever encountered any cursed undead?
Cursed undead? I imagine all undead would be cursed to one degree or another, but no, I tend to avoid scenarios that place me in harm's way.
Or perhaps, some form of cursed plant that hoards and swarms over you?
You ever think about curses?
Yes. No? I merely say I don't want to head down to Howd Gwen and find your corpse or a small scrap of what's left of your corpse. I say this as a friendly warning that it would be a wise idea to steer clear of that if you are on your own.
How loud is this conversation?
I mean, if you're outside actively vomiting, you can't hear it, but if you're just immediately outside the door, you can.
Okay.
Well, I suppose I should double down my own guard then. Keep safe. Eyes of the enemy and all that.
Why was it you were in Malta, out of interest?
Oh, I've never been to Malta.
Yet you know the accent and you're familiar with the culture.
I read a considerable amount, and I've met a Maltese before.
Apparently, a large amount of Maltese. Your accent is very good.
I pick those things up pretty easily. And then he'll actually takes like a moment to think, like a couple moments to think, and then he'll end up saying let's see, what sentence would you say? A pretty common greeting amongst Perrin. You know what I mean? It says a pretty common greeting amongst Perrin. And it sounds, even though his voice doesn't sound the same, it is unmistakably a perfect accent of what, what's his name? Valorant uses. And then after he says like this, sentence, like this common greeting, he then turns to him and says, "Grew up at the capital, correct?" And he would nod yes. Valorant would nod yes.
That's an interesting skill you have there.
Just listen. That's all it requires. I'm a pretty good listener, which is why when you give me a warning that there is magics in these lands saturating into me and negatively impacting my ability to think or perceive things well, I'm going to remove myself from that scenario. It's safer for the short and long term.
Interesting. Can I sense motive on him?
You most certainly can. Sense motive for what?
Raren was put on edge by how he instantly worked out so much information about him.
Mm-hmm.
And does not like that at all. And wants to be sure that he's telling the truth.
Absolutely.
Nice. He's telling the truth.
Oh, 1 second. Let me just... You certainly believe what he's saying?
I suppose I'll speak with my friends, see whether they want to wait for a barge or head on the road. Perhaps we could travel together for safety.
At first, it seemed like a wonderful idea. I won't lie. You clearly are somebody who's capable of handling yourself, and then you're speaking of curses, I imagine because you've dealt with some recently. Large plants, undead, things like that. However, then you also got a little bit threatening, so traveling with you has become a little bit lower on my priority list.
You realize you in effect threatened me first. You basically accused me of deserting. You realize that that's quite a hefty crime. Are you aware of that?
I'm not saying that you are a deserter. I'm just saying that if one were to find out you were a deserter, perhaps things would not go over too well for you in the future. Oof, that's a nasty roll. That's terrible. That was acting as though an intimidation check.
Mm-hmm.
And he did not roll very well. It has no intimidation on your character because of like what your stats are.
I'm attempting to be very civil here. You are saying that if someone were to find out that I was a deserter, it would not go well for me. Perhaps if no one found out, if the one person who knew was to disappear on the road. I mean, he's researching all sorts of peculiar ruins. It's not particularly surprising to think that he would go missing, is it?
People know where I am.
Who?
Well, that doesn't matter neither here nor there, but expeditions like the ones that Amon does require funding.
I would like to know who you're working for, if I may. Simply so that I know the chances of you going back to Malta and...
I told you I've never been to Malta. It'd be difficult to return to a place that you've never gone.
Do you wish to be more pedantic?
He says, nods because he was. He says, I work for myself, but there are those that hire me to find out little bits of information here and there. I can't just simply divulge who it is that pays the bills.
Well, you're looking into some form of ruins. Probably not the Perrin. Let's take a guess. You're from Dale. Could be Eustace.
Roll a sense motive check.
It's Eustace. Really?
Oh, that's rough.
What is this?
Oh, that's awesome. But the funny part is, hold on. Okay, yep, I made it. Because this is facial reactions as opposed to words. He gives no tells.
I know.
In game.
At this point, one stumbles in the door as well, and he's like, "Ah!" Just kind of makes his way over.
Feeling better.
Quiet.
Our friend Elliot here. Have a seat. Our friend Elliot here has just been telling me that I may have deserted, and that it may put me at risk. He's a very kind fellow, you see.
One's eyes just kind of snap to Elliot, and kind of looks sideways at Raven and says, "Is he threatening you?"
No, Elliot wouldn't be so silly as to do that, would you?
There's no threats being made, simply stating facts.
That's a very logical point of view. It reminds me of some of my instructors from Eustace.
One says, "Eustace?"
It's to the west of here, but you're from the east, so you're probably not very familiar.
Is that where you're from?
No.
Sense motive?
He like, as you like kind of like narrow your eyes on him, he says, "I'm Tasian."
Okay, so,
Hmm?
just nod.
Okay. It's like, but this conversation has gone, I think, a little bit different than any of us anticipated it going when we initially met one another. I do apologize that things have gone a little sideways. There's been misinterpretation of words that were said or meetings behind them or whatever the case may be. But I am apparently being flushed over with magical energies. I have
You're
research I
entirely
need
right,
to do
Elliot.
elsewhere.
I apologize for holding you up. Raren would stand, offer a hand, and say goodbye in Gnomish. Like entirely nonchalantly, he's trying to catch out the fact that this boy's so good with languages that he'd just automatically reply with Gnomish.
And he does.
He doesn't let go of the hand.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps we should sit down for a little bit longer.
Takes a deep breath, like inhales, exhales, looks and sees that while what's his name? A bit distracted but amused by the scenario. Valrin is being is just kind of watching, but then sees somewhat tipsy with an upset stomach and definitely not in a fucking around. Damn it! I swore. Norgie gets 100 daddies. Not in a messing around kind of mood. Over at one, nods and says, "As long as you're buying," and not what he's drinking.
Perhaps a couple more ales? Once we sit down, he'd obviously let go of the hand.
Okay. He sits down, though he does gather together his things and place them into his bag as you're grabbing drinks and whatnot to sit with him.
I'm going to sit extremely and uncomfortably close to him.
100 daddies for Norca. Okay, so you sit very, very close. It's one of those, like, you could hear this chair, like the grab the chair and sliding it up a few times, like the inches.
I give Raven this look. I kind of look at him, and then I look at the guy and make a like, what the fuck is happening?
A friend here knows Gnomish. It's not very commonly known unless you know magic or perhaps have spent time in Eustace. Our friend here may well know some magic, but nevertheless. Oh, hello. My little cat has come to say hello. She's fine. Nevertheless, if he were to tell Eustace that he found me out here, they happen to have strong connections with Amulta. It may not end particularly well for me. So, we, as civil beings, have decided to sit down and discuss the problem that we now encounter. Perhaps we could come to some form of more lucrative deal for you.
Lucrative in what way? What can I do for you?
You clearly value knowledge. Am I wrong?
I am a student of life, yes.
We have been sent here by a certain individual who we cannot really contact, but we've been sent here. Valren has regular contact with them. He's more than he looks, and we will probably need some help when it comes to deciphering the mysteries of this land. You will return to wherever it is that you work, whoever it is that you're working from. Give them the information that you find out. Be paid and be on your way. I'm sorry, what was your name? Elliot Mann. Have I ever heard of that name before?
You have not heard of that name before, no.
A pity. Wouldn't it be nice if everyone knew you were one of the pivotal scholars in discovering the curse of Idir?
He, obviously is listening to every word that you're saying. Kind of like nodding along because he understands everything you're saying or whatever. Until you specifically see the phrase "curse of Idir," and then he looks at you with a bit of a perplexed look. The what?
You heard. I was talking about curses earlier, wasn't I?
Well, yeah, no, I understood that. I'm no fool, but what do you mean specifically by the curse of Idir?
I'm afraid I'm not going to tell you anything more until we know more about each other. Perhaps if I was to tell you about our notes, you would let me look at your notes first. You understand that I'm the one who has more information than you.
Maybe on a very finite field, but nonetheless, I don't know what the curse of Idir is.
Where's his bag?
It's sitting to on the opposite side of him from where you guys are. That's why he had kind of like imagine like a kid getting picked on in a lunchroom, gets his so somebody doesn't grab it from him. Kind of gets his stuff and kind of like puts it down by his leg, nearby.
Let's put it this way. I will tell you a small kernel of knowledge that why you are here is related to the curse of Idir.
One puts his hand up and says, I feel like he should give us something first.
Indeed. I've given him a small taster. I believe it's only right that we go over your findings together. Valren here is an academic. I trust that you understand. He is more than, he is chomping at the bit to talk to you about this. However, we have to ensure that you are trustworthy and not going to leak any of this information or other information to other parties.
Fine. A taste then. You want something? Very well. You know magic. Obviously, you were an officer that was trained in such arts, working in Amulta, serving in Amulta. You understand how magic works. And he then looks over at Valren and says, and clearly you have some sort of magic, so whether or not it's innate or something that you were trained in. We can't deny the fact that you clearly have magic coursing through your body as we speak. Not sure about you, though, he says, looking at the divine caster amongst the crew. He says...
Watts is like, do me. What am I?
My apologies?
He more or less says, after hearing them,
yep.
Say such and such about Rayron, Valorant's clearly this, try and do me.
He thinks for a couple of minutes. Not a couple minutes, a couple moments. And he's like, all right. Well, first of all, you're not from anywhere around here. You're from Kajinxi. There's no doubt about that. But not from northern Kajinxi, where the accent starts to bleed well enough. And then he actually says something to you in Dalish. He actually says to you, more or less, like good morning, has the sun been kissing the road before you? Sort of a phrase in Daelish.
Okay.
Do you respond?
Is there a return phrase to that?
No. It's more or less just like I hope you're having a beautiful day.
One would reply in Orcish, and he would just be like, and you too.
Oh, 1 second. Where is Elliot? Oh, there you are.
Does he speak?
So you speak. So you respond in Orcish, and he just smiles and nods back, and says, "Your accent hasn't been affected by the Northlands. Daylands, the Dalelands have not impacted you. So you're definitely from over closer to the Barrenlands. The way that you occasionally shift your eyes and look over at Val makes me think that you probably had interactions with the Perrin before as well. Maybe slave traders because of your religion, maybe because they've been knocking on the borders of your country for some time. But most
How do you know my religion?
You wear it openly before you. The way that the way that you carry yourself. He actually gave up his sigil to a character beforehand. He says
that's true.
The way that you carry yourself, the way that you speak, there's a sureness to you. Somebody that says, I will not be put in chains. Nobody stands above me or before me, except for, of course, your Lord. It's literally oozing out of every orifice of your body. And that's actually something I truly can appreciate about your character. But the real question is, have you interacted with them?
Sorry, with who?
Well, I imagine the answer is yes, because gesturing
I'm
towards
as a
Rayron.
player lost.
No, you're fine. You're fine. So he says, I imagine the answer is yes, gesturing towards Rayron. He says, because we did talk about the curse of the undead. So, in your lands, did you interact with them? Are you from so far south that you actually fought the beasts that come from the Barren Lands?
One just kind of looks and gives him a little smile, and he leans in close and whispers in Necro, and he's like, something like that.
A shiver goes down his spine because of the nature of what that language is. And you can actually, as you lean back, you can roll me a sense motive check. It's actually good enough, because he's not particularly good at bluff checks in general. You can actually see that the small smile on his face, but the look at his eyes tell you he has no idea what you said, but he's excited to hear a language he doesn't know. And so when you say that, he says, I've come to a conclusion as to what you are. A man with a difficult past because of the creatures that you endured in your youth, probably taken into slavery for a period of time and carry the marks of somebody who's been a former slave, found your chains broken and decided to break chains moving forward. And so now you're pushing forward this ideology, that of your faith, as you travel your ways to the west, trying to find your own place in the world. But you carry with you knowledge like most other people can't even begin to understand. You've seen things that would haunt others' dreams to the point of death. Knowledge that I myself find quite useful. He turns to you, Rayward, and says, it doesn't matter what you are offering, I accept it.
One also says, would you like me to share something with you?
Before he takes the hand, because he was reaching out towards it, he kind of pulls back ever so slightly and looks at you and says, yes?
One kind of smiles, and he's like, just kind of gives him a regard, and he goes to place his hand maybe on the guy's neck or the side of the face.
He's gonna brand him.
And
hold on. I'm gonna roll a sense motive to see if I know what's about to happen. I probably don't though. Ugh. Okay, roll decent. Roll your bluff check. Roll decent. Ooh. I beat by 5. So if I just barely beat you, he'd be like, this is a little unusual, but because I beat you by 5.
I am going to roll a luck because I want to. Come on, please, just give me a little bit more.
Oh! Oh. So.
I mean, that's sucky. That's so unfortunate.
Yeah.
Oh my god, 5 dice left in the pool. Thank you.
Yeah. So he does. So you do reach out, and it's one of those things where he sees, he just barely sees it last second. So you can force through the grab in a very forceful and aggressive way if you want to, with a small check. But he does see the grab, and he starts reacting like as he realizes something's off here. Like he can kind of see, like all of a sudden he like looks at your hands, not quite the hand, but like the wrist, and then he goes to react. Do you just grab at his wherever anyways, or?
I keep going, and I kind of want to just entice him a little bit. So I speak in Necrol again. I just say, "Stay still, be quiet."
Roll a diplomacy check.
That's cruel.
Can I not use intimidate?
But it's not really intimidating. You're coaxing.
I guess, yeah. Okay, let's go.
Unless your dirty talk is intimidating.
Yeah, I suppose. I was gonna say you're not intimidating my panties off, are you? So you say that, and so he's like, against his better judgment, because he does have a 9 wisdom, he does not shy away. He actually leans in slightly.
Okay, and then, bam.
Shit.
Fortitude negates. Oh god. Oh,
I'm gonna try.
Oh jeepers creepers. Where's my fortitude save? Ah! Describe the effect, sir.
So, as he's taken by this language that he doesn't understand, and he didn't lunge for him. He continued just slowly pushing his hand forward, touches him on the face, and then there's like the guy just feels go really white hot, and he probably goes to move away, and one's just got him by the face, and it doesn't move, and then he's probably starts to feel like an itching and a burning, and then one just takes his hand away, and there's the mark of Brogar. If I can do that, I don't know. It says a rune or mark.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So so you mark the side of his neck and face with this brand of Rogar on him, and says, what did you do? And it takes a moment. He actually reaches down into his satchel, there's his bag, and pulls out like a small mirror and looks at himself, and once he looks at himself and he realizes what it is, like he gets wide-eyed for a few moments, and he's like, oh, and then puts the thing down and looks at you, and he's like, I'm no slaver. I've done no such thing. Why would you do such a thing?
One says, we all pay a price for knowledge. And then, like more or less, he'll just say, like, if you want to know about that language, that was my price.
He will put the mirror away. He's kind of mumbling under his breath, but doesn't say anything. He looks at you, and he gives you a very, very dead fish handshake. It's a very defeated handshake as he shakes your hand. A lot of the wind has been stolen from his sails.
How did Rayron react?
Rayron.
Rayron, he doesn't look pleased, he's impressed at the effect that his friend has had to have on this has been able to have on this person just by words. He probably feels a bit like it was underhanded. I know he talked him into it. He didn't lunge for it, but he doesn't look best pleased. Branding someone's permanent in his mind, whether or not it is, and he doesn't look like he gained any pleasure out of seeing him in pain or anything like that. He doesn't look particularly displeased either. It's just like I guess that happened.
Yeah, so one kind of just, even seeing that in you, kind of just, you can see there's a little smile on his face, and he looks back to Elliot and says, when you want to have that conversation, I'm here.
Suppose we're gonna have time on the road. Well, let me get into the information I'm supposed to share with you then. And why don't we take a quick break? We'll come back and we'll take a nice quick little break, and we'll come back for a quick little tail end of the session. So
Cool.
we'll wait, right? Yeah, we have another hour left, right? Okay.
Yeah,
I'm confused
one
for a
more
second. Yep. So we'll take a quick break, and we'll be back very shortly. I got confused about time for a second. All right, be right back, everybody. Bye.
Bye.